All right, welcome to another deep dive. You know how this works. You give us the source material and we try to, we try to make sense of it all. And this time you've given us a real head scratcher. We're diving into the ideas of the one and only Friedrich Nietzsche.
Yeah, Nietzsche. I mean, talk about a thinker who really shakes things up.
Yeah.
And the sources you sent, wow, they really get into some of his most challenging ideas. Like, what is truth, really? I mean, can we ever truly know anything for sure? It's pretty heavy stuff.
That's right. And what's interesting to me is how relevant Nietzsche feels right now, even though he was writing, back in the 1800s. I mean, we're living in this age of information overload, fake news, all this stuff. And it's like Nietzsche saw it coming. He was already questioning the whole idea of truth and how it gets used and abused.
Exactly. He was way ahead of his time. And, looking at your sources, I think what you're really interested in is how Nietzsche goes after this idea that we can just, be neutral, objective seekers of truth. He really throws a wrench into that whole way of thinking.
Yeah, I mean, when I was first reading Nietzsche, back in college, I remember being kind of blown away by this quote. Hold on, let me find it. Okay, here we go. It says, Nietzsche, o filósofo que brania martelo contra os ídolos da tradição, desmantelo a busca pela verdade como empreendimento puro y desinteresado. En sus análisis cruas y penetrantes, él expone a verdade como una máscara, instrumento de poder usado para moldar a realidad y controlar a los otros.
So he's saying truth is like a mask. What's behind that mask? Like, what's the real motivation for seeking truth, according to Nietzsche?
Well, I think Nietzsche's saying, look, we all want to believe that we're searching for truth in this pure, unbiased way. But he's basically saying, not so fast. He's suggesting that behind this supposed quest for knowledge, there's often a deeper desire for power. It's not just about understanding the world. It's about wanting to shape it, to make our own perspective the dominant one. It's almost like a battle for whose version of reality wins out.
And one of the main weapons in this battle, according to Nietzsche, is language.
Right.
Right. I mean, we use language every day, but Nietzsche really digs deep into how it works, how it shapes our thinking. He's arguing that language isn't just this neutral tool for describing reality. It actually creates the categories and the frameworks through which we understand the world.
So it's not like we're just naming things that are already out there, right? Like when we say tree, we're not just pointing to this pre-existing thing. We're actually kind of imposing a concept, a category onto the world. It's like we're drawing lines and making distinctions. And in doing so, we inevitably leave things out.
Right. And, that reminds me of Nietzsche's essay on truth and lies in a non-moral sense. He talks about how language is fundamentally metaphorical. Like, think about the phrase, the foot of the mountain. A mountain doesn't actually have a foot. But we use these kinds of metaphors, these comparisons, to try and grasp the world. But Nietzsche's point is, every metaphor, every comparison, involves a simplification, a distortion. We're generalizing, we're losing the nuances of individual experience. So truth, in this sense, becomes more about creating these workable human frameworks than about perfectly mirroring some objective reality. And, that has big implications for what we consider to be true.
Yeah, that makes sense. Okay, so Nietzsche takes on language, but he doesn't stop there. He also goes after some pretty big targets like morality and religion.
Oh yeah, he definitely doesn't hold back.
Yeah.
And this is where things get really controversial. See, Nietzsche saw traditional morality and religion not as these sources of ultimate truth, but as, and this might be hard to swallow for some people, but as tools of social control. They provide rules, beliefs, frameworks that offer stability, cohesion. But they can also, they can box in our thinking, limit our perspectives.
So for Nietzsche, questioning those frameworks, really searching for truth, that could be seen as an act of rebellion, right? Because you might end up questioning the very foundations of those belief systems.
Absolutely. Because if you start really digging deep, you might uncover some uncomfortable truths about those systems. Now, Nietzsche was especially critical of Christian morality. He saw it as, a set of rules designed to regulate behavior, not necessarily based on some kind of, universal objective truth. And religion, he argued, often offers these easy answers, these comforting stories that might actually prevent us from grappling with the complexities of the world. It's almost like it can be easier to accept a prepackaged truth than to really wrestle with the unknown.
And he talks about this inversion of values, right? Where humility, self-denial, those kinds of things are valued over, strength, individuality, that kind of thing.
Yeah, the inversion of values. It's a really key idea for Nietzsche. He's basically questioning why certain traits get elevated while others get pushed down. And he's suggesting that maybe, just maybe, It's not because those traits are inherently better or worse, but because they serve a particular social purpose. They help maintain a certain kind of order, you know. And for Nietzsche, truth-seeking could be dangerous to that order because it might, might shake things up, expose the things we'd rather not see.
It's all about power, isn't it? And that brings us to one of Nietzsche's most famous ideas, this idea of the will to power. Now, a lot of people, when they hear that phrase, they think about domination, control, the kind of power that's all about winning and being on top. But it sounds like Nietzsche had something much more complex in mind.
Yeah. Will to power. It's one of those phrases that gets thrown around a lot, but it's often misunderstood. You're right, it's not just about brute force. For Nietzsche, it's this much more fundamental drive, this energy that's present in all living things. It's about growth. It's about striving. It's about, overcoming limitations. It's the force that pushes us to create, to achieve, to leave our mark on the world.
So it's like this inherent creative energy, this drive to expand and influence, not just to control other people.
Exactly. And you see it everywhere, right? It's
Yeah.
the artist pushing boundaries, the scientist searching for answers, the athlete breaking records. It's even present in our everyday interactions as we try to express ourselves and connect with others. But here's the thing, and this is where it gets really interesting. Nietzsche argued that this will to power could also influence our search for truth. It could shape and sometimes distort our understanding of the world.
So even something like the pursuit of knowledge, which we tend to think of as this, noble, objective endeavor, it can actually be influenced by this will to power. It can be less about discovering some neutral truth and more about, promoting a certain worldview, a certain way of seeing things.
Yeah, that's a pretty radical idea, isn't it? But that's Nietzsche for you. He's saying that even in our quest for knowledge, there's this element of, almost like a competition. It's like different wills to power clashing, each trying to establish its own version of truth, its own way of understanding the world. And the winner gets to shape how everyone else sees things.
So truth isn't just this thing out there waiting to be discovered. It's something that gets created, constructed, even fought over. It's almost like a battle of ideas, right? And the most powerful idea wins.
That's a great way to put it. And, this leads directly into one of Nietzsche's most challenging ideas, the idea that truth is a social construct. It's not some fixed objective reality, but something that's shaped by our interactions, our agreements, even our disagreements. It's like we create truth collectively through language, through shared experiences, through the stories we tell ourselves about the world.
And if truth is constructed, then it can be deconstructed too, right? I mean, what happens when those shared beliefs, those foundational ideas start to crumble? That's where Nietzsche brings in this concept of nihilism. And that's where things start to feel a little bit bleak.
Yeah, nihilism. It's a loaded word for sure, and it can definitely sound pretty dark. But I think it's important to understand what Nietzsche meant by it. See, he saw nihilism as this crisis that emerges when we start to really question those traditional values and beliefs that have always given us meaning, structure, a sense of purpose. The things that have always told us who we are, why we're here. And when those things start to break down, it can feel like the ground is falling away beneath us.
Because if there's no ultimate right or wrong, no God, no objective truth, no meaning inherent in the universe, well, then what's the point of anything? Why bother searching for truth at all if it's all just, a bunch of made-up stories?
That's the heart of the nihilistic challenge, right? It's this feeling of futility, this sense that nothing ultimately matters. And it can be incredibly disorienting, even paralyzing. But the thing is, Nietzsche didn't see nihilism as the end of the road. He saw it as a necessary stage, a painful but essential process of dismantling old illusions to make way for something new.
So it's like we have to go through this period of, I guess you could call it like an existential crisis, before we can build something new, something more authentic.
That's a great way to put it. It's like we have to confront the void before we can fill it with something meaningful. And that's not easy. It can lead to apathy, to this sense of, why bother? If nothing really matters, then why put in the effort? Why care about anything at all? But Nietzsche's point is we can't stay in that void forever. We have to push through it, create new values, find new sources of meaning, even if those meanings aren't handed down from on high, even if we have to create them ourselves.
This is all feeling really relevant right now, We're living in this world where we're constantly bombarded with information, misinformation, disinformation. It's hard to know what to believe, who to trust. How does Nietzsche, this guy writing over 100 years ago, how does he help us navigate this crazy world?
That's the thing about Nietzsche. He might have been writing in the 19th century, but his ideas feel incredibly relevant to the challenges we're facing today. And I think that's because he gives us this critical lens, this way of seeing through the illusions of power and the manipulation that's all around us. The more we understand how truth is constructed, how it's used, how it can be distorted, the better equipped we are to resist those forces that are constantly trying to control our thinking.
Because it's not just about being skeptical of everything, right? It's about developing this kind of like active awareness, this critical thinking, this ability to see the agendas behind the information, to question the sources, to not just passively accept what we're told.
Right. It's about being vigilant, about being informed, about being willing to, dig a little deeper, to think for ourselves. And, one of your sources brought up this idea of vigilantia epistemica, this idea that we have a kind of natural truth detector built in. But then it contrasted that with this other idea, Schieber's thèse de Nietzsche, which presents a more, I guess you could say, a more cynical view of how we communicate.
So vigilantia epistemica is like, we have this inner sense of what's true, this ability to sniff out the BS. But Schieber's saying, maybe not so much.
Yeah, Schieber's interpretation of Nietzsche is basically saying, look, we might like to think we're good at spotting falsehoods, but in reality, there are all these other factors that can influence how we communicate, how we present ourselves, how we decide what to say and what to believe. Things like our social status, our desire to be liked, our fear of being wrong, all these things can cloud our judgment, and they can lead us to prioritize, fitting in, looking good over being strictly truthful.
So it's like sometimes we're more concerned with protecting our own image, our own ego, than we are with, actually getting to the truth of things.
Exactly. And that's a pretty sobering thought, isn't it? I mean,
Yeah.
it suggests that we can't always rely on this idea that we have some kind of infallible truth detector built in. And it really highlights the importance of being self-aware, of understanding our own biases, our own motivations, and how those things might be shaping our perceptions.
So in the end, what Nietzsche's really doing is forcing us to confront the complexity of truth, right? He's showing us how it's not this simple thing, this objective fact that we can just, discover out there in the world. It's something that's deeply influenced by power, by language, by our own personal and social context. It's messy, it's dynamic, it's constantly evolving.
And that's why he's still so relevant today.
Yeah.
Because he gives us the tools to think critically about the information we encounter, to question the narratives that are presented to us, and to ultimately, take responsibility for constructing our own understanding of the world.
And that's not an easy task, but it's an essential one. So for you, our listener, here's something to consider. As you go out there and engage with the world, as you encounter new ideas and information, how does this understanding of Nietzsche's ideas about truth change the way you approach things? Does it make you more cautious, more skeptical? Or does it, maybe even inspire you to dig deeper, to question more, to really wrestle with the complexity of it all? And how do you think this awareness of the will to power at play affects our ability to understand each other, to find common ground, to build a world where, truth matters? It's a lot to think about, but that's the beauty of Nietzsche. He pushes us, he challenges us, he makes us really think about the things we often take for granted. And in a world like ours, that's more important than ever.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more.
Guys, see you in another podcast. Don't forget to subscribe to our channel.